And we have the remaining time, we have 25 minutes for this before we adjourn for the reception in the hallway. So, question number 1.
I'd just like to know what variety of tea does Dr. Keen drink?
Several.
Okay. Next. Don't be shy. Is there a microphone that can be given to this hand quickly? Or can you get yourself, if you have questions, please step over to the mic. Or go ahead and shout it and I'll try to repeat it. Dr. Keen.
Not familiar with all the data you talked about. Could you repeat how long tea should be brewed? You know, it's a loose leaf tea. You're going to brew it, and how long before you start getting a degradation of the valuable flavonoids?
Can you repeat the question then?
Yeah, the question was how long do you need to brew tea to get some of these changes occurring? There's only a couple studies out there. It would suggest to really drive your minus epicatechin into catechin, so one of the things you're hoping it doesn't do. Oh heavens, it could take up to an hour, and so you'd say, well, no one boils their tea that long. But what people do is they have hot water pots and things of that nature, and if you looked at, look at that middle graph, that's effectively what has been the temperature you're supposed to see or serve tea at. So I think it is a real issue. What has not been done is the acute study would be to take enough individuals and say, when does the decrement and actually translate into reduced physiological effects? And to my knowledge, that has not been done yet. But there's a lot of people that are beginning to say, well, what happens particularly when you oxidize tea, how much of these compounds do you change? It's an exciting area, but not well studied yet.
So how long do you leave freshly brewed tea hot, poured in good hot water? How long do you leave it to drink over the next, 2 or 3 hours? When do the values start dropping off?
Well, the best I can pull out of the literature and what's been done is it starts dropping off a half hour to an hour. And again, if you're thinking what you're doing in your home, you'd say, well, no one's going to do that. But if you go in maybe to some Chinese restaurants over a period of an hour, there's hot water being poured into some of that tea every 10 to 15 minutes. So it's a realistic situation.
Okay, wait, I see a person at the mic. And then
My question is for Wingchi Ip, and I wondered if you could talk a little bit about the future of Yixing around the issue of if it's been harvested to near extinction or is something else going on?
Yes, thank you. And of course, there is a story that they say the clay is going to finish, but I don't believe that. And because I was told many years ago, they say it can survive for 500 years or something like that. But suddenly they say, oh, the mine is going to finish. I think this is something about a speculation on price. They just want to push the Yixing teapot to be a very rare collectibles. But to me, I think Yixing is really a very good utensil to brew tea. It's so beautiful and so functional. And one thing is very particular is when you use the Yixing teapot, it grows more beautiful for more time you use it. And so I think they should change their mind to do something very functional and very practical, and then we can enjoy using it. But at this moment, China is a very big changes in economy and in the market mechanism. So people try to spend a lot of money on what they like, and there are much promotion on the tea culture too. So I think they misunderstand how to enjoy something which is very valuable. What is the real value of it? I think, and I think it will continue to be very very hopeful, and I think we can still enjoy it for a long time. Yeah. But one thing is very special, if you have seen the little video, and most of the Yixing teapot, no matter it is expensive or cheap, they must be finished by hand. And now they have a very good training and very good system to pass the technique to the next generation. And hopefully, I think we can still enjoy using the Yixing teapot at a more reasonable price.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Wingchi. Oh, Wingchi, while you're, sorry to interrupt this process. Would you mind emailing me the YouTube link, and we'll post it on our website so people can see the whole video? That was such a lovely video, and we couldn't watch all of it today, but I think that everybody would enjoy seeing it later on.
Oh, sure. And there is a very good video because I think it was taken some time ago. The lady's name is Zhou Guizhen, and actually she is one of my very good friends, and she is the student of the great master Gu Jingzhou, and she is living in Beijing now. I can send you the link, and then you can check it out. It is a very good video.
Yeah, it looked wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, next question, please.
Yes. First of all, I'd like to thank all the speakers for just a really great symposium today. And all the topics come together so nicely. Regarding that, I have a question that actually brings together, I think, the last three topics in particular. And so there's three parts to the question. One is, I was really struck by the cultural aspects of the tea ceremony, the Japanese tea ceremony, and the fact that food is served with it. And so, and then also that the tea is very different. It's more like this, thicker, the matcha tea is very different. So I have questions as to whether or not a special cultivar is used for the matcha tea, and what is, like, are there beliefs around foods and tea that are particularly beneficial or that would be always included in like the tea ceremony?
Yeah, thanks very much. It's sort of, it's funny, in some ways, in the Japanese tea ceremony, the tea is almost the least important part. It's in a way, it is, of course, very important, and you always have a ritual greeting. How does the tea taste? It tastes delicious, thank you. But really, the food is the real art behind it, as well as the selection of the utensils. And that goes very, very far back. Eric Rath has written quite a lot on the history of Japanese cuisine and the tea ceremony, and very, very well. There's a lot of mythology around it, like this idea that the term for this sort of haute cuisine, kaiseki, can be written with different characters, and one can also be suggest a warm stone put in the inside one's kimono in order to give a sense of fullness and all of this. I mean, in tea ceremony, there's multiple meanings that are always grafted onto what's going on, but historically, it would have been pretty rare not to have at least some sort of food served, and some sort of rare food as well that people went out of their way to try to get. The food generally has some sort of symbolic element. Still be, for example, always a dish that has something from the mountains and something from the sea, and that's served in a particular sort of way. But it's more about the symbolism of the food rather than the particular combination with tea. The tea itself, obviously, because in matcha, it's the pulverized tea. You're not drinking a steep tea. Very high quality tea is very important. Otherwise, it tastes bitter very, very quickly. Or, it's easy to get bitter tea. So you really want the top, like the 10%, the best quality matcha is the top 10% of the tip, which is the sweetest part of the tea as well. And there's particular purveyors who really specialize this, like Kambayashi, for example, Gyeonsujiri, that are really known for having very high quality matcha. And the different sorts of matcha will get names from the different families of tea masters as well. So it's in a way, it's a space apart from just the steep tea or even sencha and Chinese tea in Japan.
Thank you. Next question, please.
Hello. My question had to do with fair trade and organic, or I guess let's just say organic, and with kind of the rise of that, I was just wondering if when you guys talked about kind of the chemical makeup of tea and what it looked like, if that, or if there even was a way to trace that through the steeping process or even the end result, or if you were able to see any of that, if perhaps by herbicides or pesticide use or any of that?
Well, mixed answer. In terms of pesticides, I mean, we can detect those at minuscule concentrations, which probably have no health relevance, but if one wants to say, do I find evidence of it, that certainly is doable. In terms of whether it's organic or non-organic, it would be very, very difficult. And it gets a bit complicated because when plants are under stress, they produce the very compounds that give you that bitter taste. So ironically, it tends to be the better ones which are typically better for you in terms of the flavonoid family. So it could tell you something about the conditions it's grown in and harvested under, but it would be very difficult to really say, is it organic or not, unless you are looking for some specific pesticide residue as an example.
Sorry, I know you're interested in the organic tea, but I didn't get what you are asking about. Can you repeat your question?
I was asking if when you do the chemical process of kind of looking at the properties of tea and the caffeine content and the flavonols and everything like that, if you could see kind of traces of perhaps any of like pesticides or herbicides, and if that kind of affected any of the properties, the chemical properties.
Thank you.
他说的是，就是说用那个有机茶，然后当我们在研究茶叶中的成分的时候，然后可能有咖啡因啊，然后有茶中的元素，但是你有没有可能在茶中也发现了这样的，就是茶汤中也发现了农药的成分？
茶园中用农药呢是正常的现象，但是人们呢往往通过各种方式减少农药的使用和减少农药在茶叶中的残留。其实你可以发现，我们在生活当中为什么喜欢买春季的茶叶，买细嫩的茶叶？这里边其中除了品质的因素之外，还有一个早春呢病虫害不发生，也不喷施农药，因此这个就有一大块可以避免了。
So it is quite common to use pesticide when growing tea, and also, so that is why people are trying to buy the spring tea, because by the spring tea we put less pesticide when we grow spring tea, so there is less pesticide in the tea infusion.
另外呢，我们也可以通过选择使用安全性可靠的农药，在一定的安全期间来进行使用。还有呢，我们通过农业生产措施来进行控制。
And there are some methods to reduce the pesticide. And the first is we use we use a much more safer pesticide. And also we use in a very safe period, which means that we don't pick tea leaves, so that it doesn't matter when we use the pesticide. And also, without the pesticide, we have other methods to grow tea, and that means we can grow tea without pesticide. That's what you say in an organic way.
如果说滥用农药、不合时宜的农药，那茶叶当中有农药残留也是必然的。
So there will be peptide if we use wrong peptide and in a wrong period.
Thank you. Next question, please.
I have a question for Dr. Surak. There's this phenomenon in nationalistic discourses that seek to define a Japanese national essence in which continental Asian origins of certain cultural practices get downplayed. Is that the case in discourse about nationalistic or sort of national essence discourse about Japanese tea ceremony? Are there, for example, Chinese elements in tea ceremony that get erased in these discourses?
Yeah, for the most part, obviously tea came to Japan from China, and a lot of pottery used in the tea ceremony as well. And what's interesting in the case of the tea ceremony is that the highest, most esoteric forms of doing tea are done with largely Chinese origin or Chinese style utensils. So in terms of, there's often a combination of Japanese origin and outside origin, Chinese, sometimes Southeast Asia utensils, and so they're still very high up in terms of the symbolic hierarchy of it, and everybody knows, the cha ching and Lu yu and these sorts of things. What's interesting though, as a sociologist, what I find is looking at it in practice. So I went to some Japanese tea classes in China, where one of the leading tea schools in Japan have established satellite schools. And of course, there's scrolls in China as well, and there's different sorts of dishes. And I remember sitting in as a group was trying to decide which utensils, a group of Japanese women was trying to decide which utensils to use, and one of them said, oh, well, I have this octagonal ceramic dish with some peaches on it, and they said, oh, I don't know, that might be a little bit too Chinese. So it's a particular Japanese version of Chinese that's seen as acceptable in the tea ceremony.
Thank you.
Great. Next question, please.
Well, firstly, congratulations on this great event today, and I enjoyed all of the talks and the like. And I have a question for Professor Luo from Zhejiang University. I enjoyed your presentation, yet I still find myself a little confused over the black tea and the red tea, and in particular the Pu-Erh tea, which is the result of it is a natural fermentation, and it's a pack. Pu-Erh, do you know Pu-Erh tea? Is that a black tea, or is that a separate? Did you discuss Pu-Erh tea, and is it safe? It's a very valuable.
是黑茶.
Okay.
It's what?
So Pu-Erh tea is not black tea, it's dark tea.
It's dark tea. So it's defined as dark tea. Okay, I see. And it's distinct again from the black tea fermentation and the, not fermentation, black tea process and the other. Okay, and then thank you very much.
It's like that.
What?
Black tea is not called red tea.
Yeah.
It's 习惯了.
Excuse me, can I give a little appendix to this?
Please, yes.
Yes.
Okay,
And
thank you.
actually, this is one of the most asked question in Hong Kong here. And when we say about 6 big category of tea, and we base on the Chinese naming. So namely is the red tea and the black tea, and equivalent to the character Hong and Hei. And actually in Asia, we call what you say in the English world, the black tea, we call it red tea in Asia, just like Japan, like China, like Korea, and because we look at the color of the liquor. But the Western people will look at the color of the dried leaf. So, and actually you don't have the Pu-Erh, or Pu-Erh is not commonly known to the Westerners until quite recently. So we call this black tea in China. Actually, it means a kind of post-fermented tea. It's a different kind of tea. And that means we have the raw tea, maybe we can say, the raw tea, and then we do not drink the raw tea immediately. We put it aside to store it for many, many years, so it mature or oxidize during the storage. It becomes the Pu-Erh. And of course, this process is too long. People invented a method to accelerate the process of fermentation by putting a lot of water and store it in a room with heat. So, and it finished the fermentation around 6 months and become very black in color. So no matter the dry leaf or the liquor it blew out, it is very dark in color. So one of the method to stop the confusion, and the people will call this kind of black tea as the dark tea. But I don't think this is a good term. And if we learn about tea, maybe we should still come back to a system. We look at the tea by its liquor. So the red tea means the black tea in the Western world, actually it is red in color for the liquor. And the black tea in China, it is a kind of post-fermented tea, and the liquor is very black. Sometimes we call it as black as ink in Hong Kong. So this is a kind of what we call the black tea.
Shei, thank you so much. I just also want to say, any of you in the audience that might be interested in going to Yixing, that I chair the sister city between Davis and Wuxi, and there will be a meeting in November, the 2nd and 3rd of November, and the sister city delegation will be going. And we love to visit. We have visited Yixing also in the past time. It's so beautiful. Yeah. Thank you for your lecture.
Thank you so much. Next
Thank
question,
you.
please. Yeah.
This question may have more relevance in China, but your experience in Japan, Doctor, could help. I like the systematic categorization of the leaf properties that Lu Yaoping described. I'm curious if some similar kind of categorization is being used to define the qualities of tea workers in China, from growers and farmers to processors. If there's a set of qualifications and certifications maybe that the Global Tea Initiative could take a look at just in terms of form.
We'll have that translated and get back to you.
Okay.
Uh, 有些有，有些没有，因为广大农村有些管理上和实际政策的执行过程中有很大的差别。
In fact, somehow, but others maybe not, because it's difficult to have this to implement this policy. So some place may have the certification, but maybe others is hard to get that.
因为有要求呢，是要求有健康证书，有多少是人们管理起来呢比较方便。但是呢，你知道中国的茶叶生产是千家万户的，个人的、小集体的都有生产。那么为了有些老百姓呢，可能在这些方面呢也没有做到的，但是政府呢也有要求的。
Government usually have some requirement, but you know in China that their tea garden is quite small, so some farmers are hard to get and to follow that policy.
Thank you.
Is that your question?
Okay, that's great. Thanks. And then we're running out of time, so we'll let those three people ask the questions, and that will be it. Go ahead.
I have another question about the Japanese tea ceremony. So, although you mentioned that wagashi are chosen by a theme or by season, I was wondering if there's any distinction between the wagashi served with koicha versus usucha.
Yeah, so wagashi are the traditional sweets in Japan. For thick tea, koicha, the wagashi are usually fairly large and moist. They're about 2 inches in diameter. They can be made often from, say, sort of bean mixtures, maybe some potato, in various sorts of shapes, maybe some gelatin as well. And they're fairly substantial. For thin tea, they're known as higashi, so dry sweets, and it's usually some sort of sugar. Can be from sugar beets, can be from yams, can be brown sugar pressed into the shape of something from a mold as well. And you only get one of the big moist sweets, but you can have a couple of the dry sweets if you want. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
All right, next, please.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you, Catherine, for this wonderful colloquium. My personal identity is actually a tea teacher. So here at Confucius Institute at UC Davis. But I am always questioned by many interesting questions raised by my students, like one question for Professor Luo. One question is, names for Chinese tea are quite complicated. There's no actual naming system for Chinese tea market. So, for example, is white tea Longjing, is it white tea or green tea?
正如你所说的，我们茶叶是产品名啊，龙井是产品名，西湖龙井。但白茶，我前面举的例子的白茶呢，又是品种名。它这个品种名的取名呢，是根据茶树芽体的颜色来命名的。这里就混淆了这个六大茶类那个白茶加工成白茶的，跟茶树品种的白茶就有混淆的作用在这里。那西湖龙井用白茶加工成扁形茶的呢，应该是属于绿茶，因为它一开始加工的时候就是通过杀青、竹子酶的氧化开始的。
It's true, it's quite confused in their name system. And as for the white Longjing, it's green tea actually, because Longjing is the name of the types of tea, while the white tea is the name of the cultivar.
Yeah, it's a little bit complicated. Well, I have another question for both Professor Laura and Professor Wingchi Ip. So I have been questioned by some of the consumers in the tea market. They ask, like, for Chinese tea, we usually sell it in bulks, like it's only sold as loose tea. But here in America, when for most of the American consumer, they prefer to buy tea well packed with some ingredients, instructions of using the tea. So will that give some difficulty for most of the Chinese farmers or Chinese wholesalers? And I know that Professor Wingchi Ip actually you sell tea. So do you have any experience to show us as how Chinese tea farmers can export tea to America?
Okay, Wingchi Ip, go ahead.
Thank you. And actually, I think this is something about marketing. And to most of the Chinese people, tea is so common because we drink tea for thousands of years. So everybody knows how to brew the tea. And actually, there's a flexibility how to make a good tea, and not exactly only one way. But to most of the Westerner of some acquaintances to the tea, and people are very nervous how to handle the brewing. I think as you are a tea teacher, you have a very great job, and then you can tell the people how to enjoy tea, and actually very casually and very relaxingly. Yeah, you do not need to care so much about how to make it. You will learn from the process. But it is a good idea to tell the people the basic knowledge. For example, the less fermented tea, just like green tea or white tea or yellow tea, you can make it with a lower temperature. And then you use high temperature for more fermented tea, like the red tea or the black tea in the Western world, and the Pu-Erh tea, and some highly roasted oolong. And actually, it is very easy to judge that because you can see the color of the liquor If the liquor is lighter, greener, or more yellow, and then you use lower temperature. And then if you look at the color of the liquor, the final liquor is darker or redder, and with a deeper color, and then I have to suggest you to use higher temperature. And I think this is a good suggestion for the Chinese farmers or the tea merchants to be more careful about the blending, as we have also discussed about the pesticides. And we know China is a very big country, and some tea farmers are not so careful about that. So as Professor Luo mentioned about this, and even the government have a very strict restriction for the use of pesticide, but sometimes this is very difficult to control. So I think we should trust some brand, and they are more responsible for the health of the tea drinker. And I think this is a very important point. And at this moment, I do not see we have a good system to do that, and not so many famous tea brands in the market. You can trust it, and so I think we have a lot of things to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, very last question, and then more questions can be addressed out in the hallway over something to nibble and drink. Charlie.
Thank you. I'll address this to anybody that will take it. In tea, there is a odd amino acid that's present. I think Carl had it on one of his slides. I think it's theanine. And in that important scientific source called Wikipedia, they report studies that show that that has a calming effect that sort of counteracts the buzz you get from caffeine, which is good for the Buddhists. They can stay awake but don't get overly excited. Any real evidence or research that has been done to verify or look into that?
A small amount. It's provocative and intriguing. The FDA has actually gone after some folks for trying to attribute the theanine having that calming effect, as opposed to saying it's been attributed to have calming effects. So there is some data that seem to support it, but I would call it thin at this point. But that could be as much due to lack of effort as lack of efficacy.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. Let's thank our speakers for a remarkable job.